What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Cameron Selby. Sitting here, we're going to go over some of the biggest winners and losers from the schedule release that happened from a fantasy perspective. I picked out three good, three bad. We're going to go through some of the biggest moments and most notable things and kind of briefly break down some of the teams that stuck out from a good and a bad perspective regarding the schedule release. So, kicking it off first, we're going to start off with the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, we brought up how they have such a cupcake schedule. I mean, they have three 2024 playoff opponents: Tampa Bay, Houston, Rams twice, who obviously they always play fairly well and competitively because not only divisional opponents, but they have been just trading back and forth, being competitive in the championship appearances time and time again in recent years. But yeah, the schedule it purely just sets up very, very nicely for them this year. They start off on the road, back-to-back games, but it's against Seattle, where they always play well and play tough, and New Orleans, Arizona, Jacksonville. Very, very easy way to start off at the very worst case scenario, 500 in my estimation. But then you go those back-to-back playoff opponents on the road, 3 out of 4 weeks, with the Rams, Bucks, and Texans all being on the road. But most of your home games towards the end of the season, you do have a late bye, but also the fantasy schedule, 15 through 17, playing Tennessee, at Indy, and then home against Chicago. I mean, it just really, really sets itself up well in terms of the ADP so far for these guys. And this is just a way too early, but best ball is where you want to get the most accurate ADPs because people are investing money in these teams. And we're going to be saying that even if you are just a redraft fan and fantasy player, best ball, that's the way that you don't have the auto drafters, computers telling you where ADP should be. They're getting drafted where people want them to be because they're investing money in each draft that they do. But Christian McCaffrey was the 101 back-to-back years, and obviously was the curse last year. Third time we did avoid him because of the 101 status and how everybody was picking him. We took the stand, ended up being on the right side of things. We don't like to brag about injuries, but we've kind of been on buying low and then selling high throughout his career in the recent years. But now this is a point where he's a fringe first, second round pick at the 1-2 turn. And if you do have a pick in the back end of things, just take CMC. Just do it. Stack him. It has to be a thing because you saw last year with Jordan Mason instantly start off the year with 100+ yard games. He was the waiver wire pickup for the first 5 weeks, first 6 weeks before he went down, and then ended up being Isaac Guerrero. Patrick Taylor had some to say in that regard as well. So with Jordan Mason no longer in the fold, it's Isaac Guerrero once again. Or if you want to believe in Jordan James, the rookie from Oregon, um, it's just a three-man wrecking crew. So everybody affordable ADPs, obviously Guerrero and Jordan James are not on this list in terms of ADPs. And this is the epitome of a situation of just San Francisco does not, hey, we're 50-50 splitting snaps. They're like straight up CMC, we are giving you every important touch known to man, whether it's in the pass game, run game, goal line touches, all that. It all goes to him and it all goes through him. So I expect him to be perfectly fine and reasonable. And right now, being a borderline second round pick, I'm all the way in on it. George Kittle, with Brandon Ayuk being an unknown on whether or not he will be starting the season on the pup list. Obviously, way too early. We are more than 3 months away from the season starting, but mid-season torn ACL, that puts him right smack dab in the middle of September. Being ready out the gate. But at the same time, maybe they're going to be a little bit more conservative. Juwan Jennings did have a breakout year last year. Ricky Pearsall, obviously a first-round pick in 2024, and George Kittle, obviously a top 2 tight end in football. So there's no need to truly rush him back. But the thing is, with the receivers, all of them are at reasonable prices, but you kind of got to guess which one is going to work out because not all three of them can. I don't see 5 skill players for San Francisco, as good as this offense can be, all being worthy of their ADPs, 5 guys in the top 100, but most of them will. So if you're able to nail the right ones, I think it's a very stackable way and route to go things for this team. Let's go on to one of my first losers. It's the New York Giants. I mean, the biggest thing I can say is just this is one of the worst schedules I have ever seen. Obviously, the worst strength of schedule for any team, which is tough considering they were a fourth place team last year. But you start on the road against divisional opponents, Washington, Dallas. Then you go Kansas City, Chargers, at New Orleans, Philly, at Denver, at Philly again. San Francisco, at Chicago, Green Bay, at Detroit. Your first 12 weeks, you are going to maybe be favored in one game, and that's on the road against New Orleans, and you can't just, for sure, first shoe and win. That doesn't mean that they're going to go 0-12 or 1-11. They could surprise some teams, but it's just not an ideal way to start and go about things. Russell Wilson was able to make Pittsburgh formidable, but going into a new system, even worse, skill players, maybe a better regime. I don't know. But at the end of the day, unless you're just banging on garbage time, it's really going to be hard to trust people. With Malik Neighbors being vaulted all the way into a first-round pick over guys like Nico Collins, he's kind of hovering about passing Amon-Ra St. Brown already. That kind of tier of receivers, even Brian Thomas Jr., who Ember's brought up and how much he loves him as well. Man, first-round pick, and most of your bread and butter is going to come in garbage time, down 2 to 3 scores. That's not a great recipe for success. And then the running back situation, it's going to be tough to decipher how easily either of these guys can really return value on their ADPs right now. They're obviously neck and neck. Tyrone Tracy had a good 6 to 8 week run last year, had some fumbling issues, but he's a 5th round pick. Cam Scatterboo comes in. I mean, what can we say? We expect him to fully take over the role eventually, but how much success can he have? How much of a PPR asset can he be? And if you're already a top 100 pick and you're more of a second half of the year thing, right now, running back wise, it's not really comfortable to put either one of these as like your RB3 on your team. It's more like an RB4 or 5. And at this point in the draft, this is where the RB3 range is, or it's historically been for teams that like to double up on running back early, hit those receivers in the middle rounds, and then start getting your kind of committee running backs in the 8th, 9th, 10th rounds. That's right where both of these guys are going. It's really, really hard. Wan'Dale Robinson, he was a PPR darling, but provides nothing after the catch. So it's hard to, even though it's cheap, it's not worth my time per se. And then Russell Wilson, even though he can provide moments, but a horrible start to the season could maybe only propel them to make an earlier decision to give their rookie quarterback Jackson Dart the reins. So there's just not a lot to be excited about in this team, and it's going to be hard for them to produce week in and week out, especially at the start of the season. Let's flip back to the bright side of things. So we're going to go to another winner, and this is the New England Patriots. Again, another easy strength of schedule. And while the week 15 to 17 opponents going Buffalo, Baltimore, Jets, all could be arguable top 10 defenses this year. So that's not to say that you can put a lot of stock in that, but these are guys that are going to get you to that postseason and hopefully just kind of put you over the top later on. But I mean, this is just kind of has to do with how easy their schedule is prior to their week 14 bye. I mean, they play 11, I believe, of their first 13 games are against non-2024 playoff teams. Starting off, you have the Raiders, Miami Dolphins way regress this year, Pittsburgh regress this year. Carolina is improved, but still going to be one of the worst teams in the NFC at least. Obviously, Buffalo is always a tough team, but they do play them well. But you got New Orleans, Tennessee, Cleveland, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Cincinnati, and the Giants right before your bye. A lot of defenses that are just really, really suspect and so-so. New England is just completely revamping their regime, made a lot of changes, especially on the offensive line. They were the worst offensive line in football last year, made investments in free agency and in the draft, and then obviously brought in Stephon Diggs. That was their big fish in terms of free agents. He is also coming off ACL injury, but it sounds like his was less significant than Brandon Ayuk, who we just mentioned with the 49ers. Also has way less competition for targets. If you want to consider Brandon Ayuk, how Juwan Jennings is a 180-yard threat. Ricky Pearsall, former first-round pick. George Kittle can go for 100 yards in any way, shape, or form. And CMC obviously has been the 101 in fantasy multiple years. So you see the amount of usage each person possesses. Well, New England's just somebody do something on this offense. They did bring in Stephon Diggs. Jalen Polk didn't really impress as a rookie. Maybe he can as a second-year pro. Keyshawn Boutte, Kyle Williams as a rookie. There's just a bunch of guys, Demario Douglas, another guy, that they're just going to split reps. You'll probably just have 4 different guys go for 400 to 700 yards But Stephon Diggs at least has the guy to be the go-to in clutch situations and in positive game scripts for himself, which is a positive sign in itself, and a very reasonable ADP at 80 second, which is around a 7th round pick. Wide receiver 41, I think, last time I checked. And to me, that's really, really low for somebody that has an easy schedule, has a very clear-cut path to lead his team in targets by a wide margin. Yes, he is getting up there in age, but he was being very productive as a wide receiver 2 for the Houston Texans last year. And then also Trayvon Henderson, they brought in as a second-round pick via the running back position. Him and Ramondre, to me, is a very, very strong duo as a 1-2 punch. You got the bruiser, the big bell cow caliber. This is kind of exactly like what a Detroit Lions like to do, is have a big guy that can just make those hard-earned nose runs, and then just the scat guy that can take the defense over the top with the explosive plays. That's what Trayvon Henderson would provide, but also he was regarded as like the best run blocker or pass blocker from the running back position. So he will find his way on the field early. All these guys, very reasonable ADPs. Drake May is one of our guys that we think can really, really rise and have a breakout year this year. ADP is perfectly fine and normal. So we find ways to where we will have some New England ownership this year. Now moving on to a little bit of pessimism. Again, we're going to go back and forth, but another loser, Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, the NFC East, all were going to be among the hardest strength of the schedules. They have a bottom 5 strength of schedule in terms of record of opponent from 2024. But this just kind of has to do with how the schedule has shaken out and how they're going to have to end their season. First half of the year, not too bad. Nothing really too scary or just unavoidable. Just kind of a good mixture of good and bad opponents, but some tough defenses on the road, against some good teams like Philly, Chicago, Jets, Broncos, all good defenses. But then after their bye, they go Monday Night Football at the Raiders, which, yeah, they'll probably be favored, but it's on the road. You just never know. And but following that, it's Philly, Kansas City, at Detroit on a short week, Minnesota, Chargers, at Washington on a short week. 6 straight playoff teams to end their fantasy postseason or fantasy season, with most relevant leagues ending in week 17. Man, what a gauntlet they're going to have to go through at the back half of the year. This is honestly a team that I just kind of feel like this is a good opportunity to sell high if you were to be making moves in your regular redraft leagues. And CD is the only unavoidable, just, hey, you draft him and just play him and start him every week, and he's going to do wonders for you once again. But even George Pickens coming in, I think that actually helped, did not hurt him, because you don't have to necessarily worry about him being driven into the ground like he was last year, where it was just overuse. And then with Dak going down, and they were just force feeding him about 15, 16 times a game with Cooper Rush. And obviously his shoulder just kept getting banged up, and they shut him down for the year after, they ended up having nothing to play for towards the end. But with that said, Dallas has a tough road ahead of them, and it's going to see, I could see opportunity where they're going to have a whole lot of struggles scoring the football, and that's going to, correlate with just a lot of negative plays and not having success offensively. So with that said, like George Pickens, I really liked. I was like, I'm going to get some shares of him. But in just a week after the trade that took place, he went from like a 90th overall ADP to where he's a 5th round pick now. I'm just not buying that. I won't. Dak being outside the top 100, very reasonable, especially when he's notorious for being a stat patter in garbage time and stuff like that. Fantasy doesn't really matter. I just want the points. So don't mind that. But then trying to figure out this running back room, we were wrong on it last year. Probably going to be wrong no matter where we go. But if I were to invest in it at all, please just stack the running back room, and just, you're going to be wrong on one, but hopefully you can just kind of in combination have a serviceable, flex opportunity or option throughout the most of the season, especially in a best ball kind of format, where like Rico Dowdle last year was a absolute zero, but then you got to the fantasy postseason, 100-yard game, 100-yard game, 100-yard game, and obviously they let him walk this year. Javonte Williams coming off a bad year, but he is a more talented running back, even though he did not play well. It was also not a good scheme. Jaden Blue, we haven't been huge fans of him, even being a Longhorn fan. He just never really stood out and jumped off the table for me. And then Jay Ferguson, he's done well with opportunity, but he is a very average tight end that he doesn't really provide much or get you excited. The only thing is they're all reasonable ADPs, and even CeeDee Lamb being a middle first round pick, it is actually one of my favorite first round values. It's going to be interesting to watch, and I feel like a lot of Cowboys kind of supporters are going to be very disappointed this year. But if you play fantasy football, you're just looking for stats and points, and hopefully that'll work out if you do end up investing. But yeah, jumping over our last winner, we got good old Trey McBride and the Arizona Cardinals. They're another one that just kind of really excites you the way their kind of schedule shook out. They had a top 5 strength of schedule. Don't have a ton of tough opponents, but I think it really sets up nicely the way that they get to start the season. New Orleans, Carolina, San Francisco, all defenses that are going to be bottom half of the league. Then you got Seattle, Tennessee, at Indy, Green Bay. I mean, no one really gives you any kind of cause to pause of that this team will be struggling to score against any of these opponents. It feels like all these games are going to be in the 20s in some way, shape, or form. And if Arizona can just stop getting out of their own way of, weird play calling and just kind of questionable decision making, it still stands in my mind last year where against Buffalo, who was one of the worst passing defenses the previous year, and they start off with like 14 touches in the first quarter to James Conner, and then just never get anything going, and then end up having like 100-something passing yards, doing stuff like draws on 3rd down and 9, and then not going for it. Those kinds of things just really, really irk you. And but at the end of the day, you just have to pray for optimism. And the way this schedule's set up, it's really nice. And with Kyler Murray, hopefully, getting back to what we know and love him as being a very reliable fantasy asset. I mean, this is definitely the schedule that's going to play into his favor. Following their bye, Dallas, another Seattle, San Francisco game, Jacksonville, going to be bottom 5 defense. Tampa Bay doesn't scare you at all. And then going into their fantasy postseason, you finish off. Houston's going to be tough, but Atlanta, Cincinnati, very, very ideal opponents for good fantasy goodness at the very end of the season. So just kind of a lot of things going the right way. The tough thing is, of all these teams to be optimistic about, you do really have to invest in them early. Trey McBride, because of his huge season last year, in spite of only having one receiving touchdown, which was at the very, very end of the season, he's vaulted all the way to being a 2nd-round pick. Last year, the tight end 1 was going at the end of the 3rd round to mid 3rd round. Later in the summer draft, whatever you want to call it. But now you got 2 tight ends because he's tight end 2, right behind Bowers. He's basically at the 2-3 turn, and it's very, very early investment. But when he is putting up, the 12, 13 target games like he was towards the end of the season, he is a league winner-esque tight end. And this year has the best strength of schedule of all tight ends this year, goes to the Arizona Cardinals. And so it really kind of shapes out for him in a big way. Marvin Harrison, very disappointing rookie year from a holistic standpoint. And due to all of his fellow classmates, having great rookie years, going over 1,000 yards, he failed to do so. Hopefully he with another full offseason with Kyler Murray can turn things around. James Conner is always annoyingly our high-end RB2. And until he gets hurt, just nothing is really going to change from that. He's going to get most of the important touches. And then Trey Benson, to me, is still a formidable handcuff. Didn't really get much opportunity last year because he actually was pretty durable. But if James Conner went down for any kind of significant portion, I think Trey Benson can be serviceable, especially with his ADP dropping further than what it was last year. Kyler Murray, lowest ADP I can remember, at least since past his rookie year. 94th overall, so 8th-round pick. Not too bad and shabby of a investment if you want to go that route. Michael Wilson, he has the occasional 14 to 16 point game too. And lastly, to wrap it up, we're gonna close it out with the Green Bay Packers, who, similar to Dallas, have the 5th worst strength of schedule. This one kind of has to do with just the opponents they have at the very end and the way that they have to play them. It doesn't help that they have the first bye week of the season being week 5. I hate when that happens, especially when teams are trying to get in a rhythm. But this has to do with most of their games at the end of the year. They're all outside and they're all cold places. Following this is week 8 on, so this is mid to late October and on the rest of the fantasy season. You got at Pittsburgh, you got Philly at home, and again, any kind of home game later in the season for Green Bay is going to be cold. At the Giants, Minnesota at home, at Detroit, that's their only dome game. Chicago, at Denver, at Chicago, and then Baltimore at home. So all of these games are really going to be cold, bad weather games. So that's just going to be limited with, what they can do offensively. And really the only thing, unfortunately, that you can really trust on this offense is Josh Jacobs. The only thing is this is one of the highest ADPs he's ever had, being a late second round pick. So you got to invest early. But outside of that, even with Christian Watson going down and opening up a little bit of target share and route participation, it's not like you can really trust any of these guys. I mean, Matthew Golden being their highest ADP receiver, he's never really put together a, high-end fantasy caliber season coming out of college. He was a late bloomer, and he's vaulted himself into being a first-round pick, and we just haven't loved it. So him, Jaden Reed, is just okay. But I mean, at least his ADP is much, much lower than it was last year. We liked him in the 60s, and obviously that looked great in September. But then they just have a knack for just having the occasional one target, zero catch games. And it's hard to explain, but that's just the way they use him. Jordan Love coming off a down year as well. He was just kind of, I know he had multiple injuries and banged up, but it's not like he was too impressive. I mean, 16 points a game fantasy wise, doesn't provide a ton rushing. He had less than 100 rushing yards last year. So it's just kind of like you're living by all the passing stats and accumulative touchdowns that you can throw. And it's not like he's throwing a ton to where you can really invest in him. So him even being at 120th overall, it doesn't really excite you too much. Tucker Kraft, he's kind of right in he's at the start of this weird tight end range of the Jake Fergusons of the world, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, all these frustrating guys, but at least you can tell the story for any of these guys that they could have legitimate, hey, they're going to be second on the team in targets, where Tucker Kraft will have the occasional 20-point game, but he will also have many 4 target or less games. That's just kind of the way that Green Bay has utilized their tight ends. And on top of that, the other tight end that's escaping my mind that came into last year as being the starter went down early and he missed most of the season. Him being back, Luke Musgrave was the name. But, just kind of splitting more targets from his own position. Romeo Dobbs, another just a guy. So a lot of these are just like guys I don't really know what to do with or trust. And it's I just don't know what to do. And then on top of that, being in cold weather, not trusting Jordan Love, it's not really like I am excited about rostering any kind of Green Bay shares this year other than Josh Jacobs, who of course is awesome. And then if you wanted to invest in gamble with his handcuff Marshawn Lloyd, because they didn't really draft any other running backs. Marshawn Lloyd was their rookie last year that basically had an ankle injury and then came back and immediately had an ankle injury. So he really got no time, essentially redshirted his rookie year. And so him being back, we'll see if he has any kind of role outside of, being behind a healthy Josh Jacobs. But it just kind of remains to be seen. But we've also seen good opportunities in recent years with Matt LaFleur offenses where, backup or handcuff running back A.J. Dillon, Jamal Williams just come in and be very, very serviceable as late round picks. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you have not already. Join this community. We appreciate you guys every single day growing with us. And I know it is the dead time of football, but we are starting up best ball season as well. We just kicked off with last Thursday with our first one. We're not going to have one this week, but we will on most weeks going forward, mostly on Thursdays. So be sure to tune in for that. Follow our tweets and everything for any kind of new information or updates that we have from you guys. And then we're going to get more heavy into our Discord as we get closer to the season with any kind of news, fun, best ball questions, information. We just want to interact with you guys. So we can't thank you enough for the participation so far. Let's keep on growing. Let's keep on showing and we will see you guys on the next one.